Welcome back to A Walk in Their Moccasins. This is level 3, the last level of this quest. There will be 2 missions, each about Europeans and their interactions with Native Americans. This can be found in your Indiana history book on pages 92 to 99. Here are important words to know. Please make sure you're filling in the blanks for the missing words in each definition. We have colony, voyager, expedition, missionary, ally, rebellion, and proclamation. Colony is a settlement that is ruled by a faraway government. Voyager is a French trader. Expedition is a journey into an area to learn more about it. Missionary, a person who teaches his or her religious beliefs to others. An ally is a partner in war. A rebellion happens when an uprising or a fight against a ruling government. And a proclamation is a public announcement. Let's look at our mission objective for mission 1, which is on the French. We want to be able to explain the relationship between the early French explorers and the historic tribes of Indiana. Our challenge questions, which you'll answer to make sure that you got it, is why did Europeans first come to North America? What countries made claims to land in North America? So what countries said that this land was theirs? What role did a man named La Salle play in France claiming land in North America? And what effect did the fur trade have on both Native Americans and the French? Let's consider our big question. What was life like for historic Native American tribes in Indiana, and how did they change after the arrival of the Europeans? Last level, we learned about what life was like for historic Native American tribes. This level, we're going to learn about how they changed once the Europeans arrived in America. Europeans in North America. Remember that Christopher Columbus accidentally discovered the New World in 1492. After that happened, many other European countries began arriving to this new world. The British, French, and Dutch, and Spanish were the major European countries to say that the land in North America was theirs. People left Europe then for many reasons. Some of those people were explorers looking for a trade route to Asia. And the reason they wanted to go to Asia was because Asia had a lot of spices, and those spices would be used on food to not let it spoil and to make it taste better. Back then they didn't have refrigeration to make their food last longer, so they put spices on them to make the taste of the food not be as bad when they started to spoil. So those spices were very, very, very important. And so these explorers were wanting to find a way to get to North America other than their traditional way. Others in Europe left looking for religious freedom. They didn't like how the government was treating them in regards to how they wanted to worship and practice their religion. Other Europeans had heard of great riches that could be found on the continent, and so they were looking to go and make a lot of money by finding these great riches. So they left for one of those 3 reasons. Some early explorers were the Spanish. They were the first to arrive. They claimed land in Florida, Mexico, and southern North America. The British claimed land along the eastern coast of North America, while the French settled around the St. Lawrence River and the Great Lakes. You should be able to see that in your notes, as well as here on the slide. The British, that's the land they claimed, was in red. The French were in blue, and the Spanish were in yellow. Notice how that map fits with what we just said. The Spanish were down south. The British were on the eastern coast and much of Canada. And the French were kind of in the Midwest around the Great Lakes. This lesson, remember, this level is about the French. The land that the French explorers claimed they called New France because it was new, but yet they still had French customs and traditions, and they spoke the French language there. All the French people moved to that area, so they called it New France. They set up colonies for people to settle and start their new lives. Remember, colonies are places set up by countries that aren't in that country, but they're still ruled by that country. So these were places in North America that were set up by the French, but they still fell under French law, even though they weren't in France. From these colonies, French explorers, missionaries, and traders explored the Great Lakes, the Mississippi River, and the Gulf of Mexico. So they went all around the continent to explore this new world. One of these men was a name named Sieur de La Salle. There you see a picture of him. He was the first known European to come to what is now Indiana. And he was one of those men that was looking for a water route across North America, hoping that it would lead him to Asia. In 1679, he left New France to explore the Mississippi River and claim land to build an empire for France. So he left New France for those two reasons, to explore the Mississippi River and to claim land to build a bigger empire for France in the New World. His guide was a Native American named White Beaver, who led him to the Kankakee River. There he met with chiefs from the Miami and South Bend under a large oak tree called the Council Oak, promising to keep peace, saying that he wouldn't force them off their land, he wouldn't fight with them. That's what they met at that Council Oak, promising. And there you see a picture of it. You see the Council Oak there in South Bend, Indiana. Here you can see his voyages in the New World. Notice how he started up here, came down these Great Lakes, started exploring. This is when, and now he's in New France still, and here's where he is, right at that Kankakee River. From there, he left to go down the Mississippi River. I apologize for my inaccurate drawing, but it's basically that path. So there you see what his path was. He started in South Bend. He came to that spot in Indiana, and then he would travel down the Mississippi River from there. The fur trade was a very important interaction between the Europeans, first the French, and the Native Americans. During his expedition, La Salle reported many fur-bearing animals in the region, so animals that were wearing fur. This brought many fur traders to Indiana because this was something that was very valuable. It was an important activity between the Native Americans and the French. It grew very quickly and was very important because the Native Americans trapped beavers and other animals with fur and traded them with the French for goods such as tools, knives, guns, blankets, and beads. Your textbook refers to this or the reason that they wanted these furs was because these furs were scarce in Europe, meaning they didn't have these animals in Europe, so they were very valuable. And the guns were scarce in the New World. Native Americans didn't have these tools, these weapons, so they were scarce to the Native Americans, and so they were very important. They each had something that they wanted. After they would trade for the furs, these French voyagers would then ship them back to Europe and bring back more of these European goods to trade with the Native Americans. So it was a very important interaction between the Native Americans and the French. Another group of French that were here were French missionaries. They came to teach Native Americans about the Christian religion. These missionaries questioned the Native Americans' religion and tried to convert them to Christianity. That is one of the important parts of their faith, is to try to convert others to that faith. And so that's what these French missionaries were trying to do. They didn't like the religion that they were doing, and they wanted them to convert to Christianity. So those French missionaries were there. What effect did the French have on Native American life? Well, we just looked at one of them. A couple of them, actually. Many Native Americans began to rely on the goods that they traded with the French. No longer did they just rely on what nature had given them, but they started to rely on the goods that they were trading with the French. And this caused them to hunt animals for their fur instead of just for their food. And many of these animals started to disappear and made these Native Americans look elsewhere for food groups, causing conflict between groups. Recall that they each kind of had their own defined boundaries about what areas they were supposed to look for food in. And once that they had hunted all the animals, they had to go looking elsewhere, and sometimes that made them go to another person's territory, and that caused conflict, so that wasn't good. The French also caused conflict within tribes because they were taking away power and influence from chiefs and tribe councils. The French also brought with them European diseases like smallpox and measles, and many Native Americans had never been exposed to these viruses and these diseases, and many of them were killed, unfortunately, because the French brought them these diseases. As the years went by and their populations shrank, it would make it more difficult for them to defend their lands and then their ways of life in the future, and that's what we'll see here in the next mission. So these diseases were not very good for the Native Americans because it killed off a lot of them, which made them more vulnerable to attacks both from other tribes like the Iroquois as well as Europeans. What effect did Native Americans have on the French? French fur traders and Native Americans in Indiana, they lived in peace. They were important allies, and they remained friends. We'll see next mission when they start having war with the British that they remained allies for the most part and remained very close. The French didn't try to force them off their land. That's why they got along. That's why they were allies. Remember what LaSalle at the Council Oak promised them, that they would keep peace. They would not force them off their lands. In the coming years, as I've mentioned, the French and British began to fight for land in North America, and when that happened, most of the Native Americans actually sided with the French. Many of the French adopted the customs and ways and traditions of the Native Americans to help keep the peace. Some French men married Native American women, and some Native Americans adopted the religion of the French as they tried to convert them. It is now time for you to make sure that you have answered the challenge questions, that you have understood, that you got it, that you got these questions, you understand what the answers are, you understand what we talked about. All of your notes are filled out, and when that happens, you are ready to try to take the checkpoint. If you have any questions, please let me know.